Good morning, viewers. It's the 25th of April 2025, and it is, boy, I don't know, 6 something in the morning. It's a little bit later than yesterday. I think I was out before 6. But first, since I'm right here, I was going to show you, here's a little complex. This is not the same place I was yesterday, but it is, it's a lot of, this is like a culture center for the most part of that same truck factory. Like I said, they have a lot of assets in Minsk, so so that is one of them. And I think you can like rent out small rooms, maybe hold classes if you want or something. I guess there's some up on the top, I believe. And I don't know, some kind of training or instruction things there. I guess. I don't know. I don't even still don't speak Russian good enough to know about that stuff. I could go in there and maybe use my hands a little bit and translator on my telephone and find out what that thing is all about. I mean, if there were classes that would be interesting for me, I don't know. But speaking of classes, today is my last day of the Russian language class, and it's not that I think my Russian is so great or that any certain measure has been made, like a test or whatever. I guess it's just kind of a continuous thing. You can stay in as long as you want or whatever. A lot of the training is up to the teacher, and I guess they have to, meet certain criteria. Some are a little slower than others, but anyway, I think by a certain time. I'm talking about the Minsk Linguistic University, and I guess generally that's a little bit better than some of the other universities. And I heard yesterday that there was another university right outside of Minsk somewhere that's much, much cheaper. And the main reason why I'm not continuing is because it's very, very expensive. I'll tell you what, it's much cheaper if you learn Russian in the United States or Germany or someplace like that, rather than Moscow or Minsk, because it's really expensive. And a lot of the people that go there, the foreign people that go there, are quite wealthy people. A lot of them drive really fancy cars, sometimes cars that drive themselves. You can go to sleep at the wheel and everything's fine. The car will drive itself once you put in your destination. I've seen people like that. And then some guys have like pretty much, maybe they're 1 year or 2 year old Mustangs, top of the line models and things like that. And but some of the Chinese, for example, that are going there, they work and they go to school, which I don't know how they do that, because even when I'm just going to school, it's too much for me. But there was one guy, he was part of he had a dealership here, let me just put it that way, with electric cars. So he was here selling electric cars for some big company in China. And, he had quite a few deficiencies and all, but he told me, he said he's just concentrating on the very most important things that he can handle. So he was doing that. I don't know where he would find the time. Maybe sitting there around waiting for customers to come so he could study at those times. And he said he hired a tutor, of course, so he had a tutor helping him out. And but anyway, he was quite marvelous. And then there's another guy in another class that I was in. He also has a business, and I guess he's selling, I don't know, he's got like maybe a couple stores in Minsk. And I don't really know, because I didn't talk with him much about it, but selling a lot of things, probably made in China stuff. So, but that's how it is. And so these people are actually working to get, to have good incomes. And, some of them from China have obviously rich parents or something, and they're paying for them. And one girl in our class, a young girl, I guess at home she had a Tesla. Things like that. I don't even know how some of them can actually be in classes for some years here, and quite good in Russian actually. So, but it's one guy was from Georgia. He's the guy that I knew that had a self-driving car, and he mostly did a lot of chasing women. And he was, a lot of these guys are out for fun. One guy said he had some sort of job, which I think it was his parents paying for that. A lot of people, you never know what the real truth is. So they come up and say, oh, this or that, and actually mommy and daddy are paying for it or whatever. But anyway, that's just if that's not even interesting to you guys, but I thought I would put that out. And I just can't afford it. It's very expensive to go to classes here, especially when you're not working, when you're taking class. Normally, you know, the classes are during the time when your person has a regular workday, and the pay is very low in Belarus for most jobs. And I was thinking I was looking into some sort of a job. Somebody that I used to work with when I was working at the zoo, she is working at a greenhouse somewhere, and she said she's getting $2,000 a month. And I wrote to her to ask her if they're looking for other people, and you know, if I could get, but she never answered that one. And I, you know, sent her videos, you know, because she likes animals and stuff too. So I send her things when we find some, you know, weird cat videos or something, or animals and on the internet, and you know, she responds to those, you know, with hearts and all that sort. But she didn't answer that question, so I don't really know what the deal is. Is that such a job, or I don't know. But most people here are very honest, so I don't know if she's fibbing, or maybe they don't need anybody. I don't know why she never answered the question. She didn't say, well, they don't need anybody. She could have just said that, but I don't know. Okay. And I read a comment on Sputnik yesterday. So let's get into some news a little bit. I read a comment on Sputnik yesterday, and it was a comment to Donald Trump's comment saying he has no favorites when it comes to Ukraine and Russia. And the person wrote into the comment, it says, is that why you're sending all that money to Ukraine and all those weapons to Ukraine, and the surveillance and the satellite, you know, and you don't do that for Russia? And Russia is the most heavily sanctioned country in history on the planet, you know, and yet he has no favorites, you know. Obviously Donald Trump doesn't have the ability to end all of that stuff anyway, but he could end some of it, and he's not. But but he doesn't have any favorites. I don't know. The thing goes on and on. The only good thing is for Russia, and Russia says this, is that at least he, for the most part, understands Russia's position. And maybe they did in the Biden administration, as maybe they do in Europe, but they try to play stupid, and you know, they don't see that man behind the curtain. They make sure they don't see it, and oh no, Russia's the aggressor, and it's just kind of sickening when you think about it. You know, so Ukraine killing all those people that they said were their people by their own admission, and they were killing them, you know, because they had Russian blood. They either, you know, get out and move to Russia, or they're going to die. But no, they're good people. They're good people, and Russia attacked. It wasn't them. It's much like what's going on in Palestine and Israel. It's a sickening thing. It's a sickening thing, and we're all supposed to be playing stupid, obviously. Oh, we don't see that, or oh, this is justified, and that is justified. And there's some sort of a thing going on right now, I guess, where Armenia is. They had you know, all these disputes with Turkey for all these years, and they were talking about the Armenian genocide. When was that? About 1915 or whatever. And Turkey is always pissed at them for saying it wasn't a genocide. And I guess Armenia is dropping that word, genocide. Apparently, I don't know if everybody's going to be going for that. It seems like it was a long time ago. And you know, Russia historically has always been dropping all of the things that the West has done to them, and said, well, okay, the past is the past. Belarus, very, very, very much so. You know, all of the people massacred by the Germans and the Ukrainians, the Banderite Ukrainians in World War II. Belarus has always been looking away from that as if it really didn't happen. They kind of, you know, mention it. Of course, it's a part of history, but then they downplay it. And with all this stuff going on with Ukraine, a lot of time now they're coming out with a little bit more truth. And of course, it was more than 30% of the Belarusian population was massacred primarily by the Ukrainians, and of course, under a lot of the leadership of the Germans at that time. And of course, the Belarusians lost far, far more people than the Poles did. But whenever you're seeing in the West, they say, oh, they killed Poles. But they never, ever, ever say that they killed the Belarusians. And the Belarusians, as a percentage of their population, they lost far more than any country anywhere in World War II. So they lost a huge amount of people. Belarus, nobody talks about that. So it's something Belarusians have to bear. And a lot of them are also playing as if it's, oh, we don't see that as well. You know, and that's been put on by the West. And of course, it maybe looks like it was a bad move to downplay that, but Belarusian government has been doing that. in order to facilitate maybe better relations with the West, like ignoring the fact. And of course, as you all know, the rest of Europe, and at least, well, the Baltics were definitely complicit in a lot of that. And anyway, the rest of Europe is also on their side. Let's just be honest, they're on the side of the Nazis. And it's this huge wave of Nazism. And I keep talking about this in the West, and a lot of people be mentioning this too a lot. It's incredible. But this is a big wave of Nazism that's going on in the West, but they just don't want to call it Nazism. But, walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, acts like a duck, and must be a duck, but nobody wants to say that. So, I know, those are the words of Benjamin Netanyahu, by the way. He should be looking in the mirror when he says that. But anyway, I don't know. Yesterday, my video took so long to download. It was downloading, and like after 40 minutes, of course, it stops. YouTube pulls that on me, apparently. Apparently, that is YouTube doing that. And they just stop uploading it. It just stops. I can be waiting 5 weeks, and it'll still be stuck there in that same place. So I have to delete the download and start all over again. And of course, it was only halfway through my class when it stopped. And then I can't use this phone. I can't do any translating or anything while the video was uploading. I have no idea why. It's a Samsung S23 Ultra, I believe, or Pro, or one of the very good ones. And I don't know, it doesn't seem that good to me. I don't know, maybe somebody has to invent a phone where you can, I don't know, be uploading a video and still use your phone. I mean, like I said, you can use certain things, but it practically doesn't work. You cannot use your translator. I don't know. But let's keep on going here. Yes, okay. I was going to talk about Michelle Obama, and people have talked about her before, as far as, basically, it's the same leftist sort of thing. We're the victims, we're the victims. And she's, of course, talking about herself. Michelle Obama and her struggles. I mean, it's really difficult. I don't know where to spend all this money, and I have 3 personal hairdressers, and it's not very easy. I got to manage these people and 4 chauffeurs, whatever. My husband, when we entered into the White House, we only had $2 million, and now we have 30 million. I don't know. It's just not easy. I think maybe they have more than 30 million. Martha's Vineyard. Oh, it's so tough. We have to pick grapes at Martha's Vineyard, which I don't know if there ever were any grapes there. Anyway, but, super rich people. So much about the Obamas. It's so much is fake. What was she saying here? How painful it is. It's the pain of being a black woman, I think she was saying. Probably like Whoopi Goldberg or what's her name? Oprah Winfrey. I mean, it's so difficult. Or who was this woman in the Black Lives Matter that bought all these properties because she was getting huge amounts of money, Black Lives Matter is nothing but a big money scheme, robbing people. And this black lady, of course, she bought her houses all in white neighborhoods. Black lady, and she didn't want to live with black people. I don't know, very strange people. I don't know, that's how that really works, though. Just making this point, like I said, playing the victim and all that. Doesn't matter what. It's just like Zelensky. Oh, we're the poor victims. I don't know. I got tens of billions or hundreds of billions of dollars, but poor me, I can only afford a green T-shirt. Anyway, gosh. I don't know. You look at, it's like there's 2 types of people. There are these victim, leftist, nut job types of people. I don't know. It's a nut job to me and maybe to you, but to them, I guess they're normal. And we're maybe the aggressors, where we want to see fair treatment with everybody. Hey, I tell you what, you can even be a friggin' transgender, and I don't really care, or homosexual or whatever like that. I'm not going to come after you, but it's weird. A lot of them come after people that are straight. And I was watching this video yesterday, and there was a guy, I don't know how big he was. They just showed him like from like here up, and it was really strange. And he had long blonde hair like me. He was more masculine than I am. Very, very charismatic guy. Very charismatic. And he could actually be a pretty decent, cool guy. And, if he had his own channel or show or something like that. He had quite the personality. But he was a friggin' transgender, and he had boobs. And I'm looking at this guy. I mean, they just showed part of it. I'm thinking, he's got big breasts. I'm going, how in the heck do they do that? And he was talking about how he goes into the women's, and he's such a nice guy, he said he goes and he uses the women's bathrooms everywhere. And if some woman complains, he will step out and wait till that woman leaves, and then he'll go back in. And so, but I don't know what is his need to do that. Why doesn't he just go to the friggin' men's bathroom? I mean, when you gotta go, you go, hey, I'll take a tree. I'll take a tree or a bush if I can, if I don't see a bunch of people around, and it's mostly that I don't, and I think it's actually illegal in Belarus, but I do it, of course, too, and I think probably a lot of other people do. But anyway, it's mostly, kind of like a little bit of privacy or something, or doing it discreetly, and you don't want to be, like in Germany, they do it all over the place, and it's not against the law necessarily, just you can't face traffic. And then you have this really strong stench of urine in a lot of places, and it's like, wow. I don't know. I showed some of that a little bit in one of my videos when I was in Germany, but more garbage. They don't take care of the weeds. Like even here, look at this. This is an area they, maybe they haven't even mowed it. Maybe only once or something. They'll mow it again. There's no high weeds here, even though it's not the greatest area, but anyway, they keep things at least somewhat nice in Belarus. So, but I don't know. In Germany, I guess the line is drawn a little bit more further into chaos. 99 chaos is coming after us. Remember, get smart. Okay. There was some good news, kind of good news. It was kind of, and when you first start reading it, it seems, oh, this is fantastic. But apparently, an appeals court overturned the Constitutional Court's decision to block this Călin Georgescu in Romania, because actually he, for the most part, won the election. He had far more support than anybody else, and I guess that was the first runoff of the election. And very obvious, he would have gotten the nomination because some of the other parties that were running even support him. So, and so that would add to his 23% that he got, and the establishment parties got far less, and they didn't even get 20%. I guess the top one, I think maybe it was 17. Anyway, but the big difference is the Constitutional Court in the United States is called the Supreme Court, and of course you can't really appeal any higher than that. And some countries, they have their higher courts, and you can appeal, like there's the in some of these British places, you can have the highest court in your country. And and then like there's a dispute, I remember, in the island that I was on, to have the Caribbean courts take precedence. But in that island I was on, I guess it's called the Privy Council, I believe it was called, in Great Britain, is the highest court. So it lets you know it's still part of the colonial empire. However, in the country that I was on, the prime minister had been there a long time, and he, for the most part, controls a lot of people in the Caribbean court. So a lot of people, did not want the highest court to be, the Caribbean court, because what is that thing is called? Corruption. And it's just like what was going on with this Georgescu guy, and the ones who ruled that this guy should be barred from, or this guy didn't win, and to cancel the election was the European Union. So it's not like there is. Anyway, you guys know what I'm talking about. There's corruption everywhere, and but there's also, this is so friggin' complicated. Oh, and I think, let's see, did I write it down here? It's called the the presidential, the Electoral Bureau said he can't run for president of Romania. So it's not just these courts. Then they have something, like I said, called the Electoral Bureau, and says that he cannot run for the highest office in Romania. It doesn't matter if more than 51% of the people want him to be the leader of Romania. Oh, but we have to have democracy. And democracy means a couple people sitting on some electoral thing say he can't run. Oh gosh. Democracy. Anyway. So what else? Let's see. In any case, how the world works, lots of threats. And Trump, he's saying that he's putting a lot of pressure on Russia. So, and everybody, you know, when you have a lot of the press coming in there, definitely they're on the side of Ukraine, just like the United States government is heavily on the side of Ukraine, and there's no way that that's not true. The things that the Trump administration supports Russia on mostly is just a bunch of friggin' words. Oh yes, and then they understand the situation and all that sort of thing, but it's all going in Zelensky's direction. And you see that, even Trump said it himself. You know, that's weird. Trump comes up and says the truth, but yet but what about the actions? You know, and he says that Zelensky is delaying all this. And then he comes back and forth by saying, oh, Russia's easier to deal with than Ukraine. And then he comes, and then there's these things, and a lot of this is from the press. You don't know what is true and what isn't true. Or sometimes he shoots off his mouth a little bit, and then he says something completely the opposite on the next day. But is it, you know, like Russia delaying it, or, and then, yeah, I don't know. It just goes back and forth. So you, like I said, you don't know what really is the truth here. Okay, let me see. I got to stop. I write so small, I got to stop. I can't walk and read it too. So somebody asked Trump, so what concessions is Russia making? Well, the very first one is Russia did not want the war. They did everything possible to make sure there wasn't a war, and the West wanted the war. They had the Minsk Accords. France, the president of France and the chancellor of Germany signed it. It was ratified by the United Nations, and Ukraine decided, oh, we're not going to obey it. And then they even come right out. Poroshenko said, well, we had no intention of obeying the treaty that we signed. And even Hollande, who was the president of France, said, we had no intention of following it. Merkel came out and said, oh no, we had no intention of, we were just doing that to buy time so that Ukraine can weaponize even more, even if we were sending weapons to Ukraine for 15 or 20 years to use them as an anti-Russia, to attack Russia. And it's like, oh, Russia's the bad guy, right? You know, obviously, and it's like it's been part of history for a long, long time. The whole thing, and it looks like it's probably never, ever going to stop, is to go after Russia. Russia, 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 Russia. And you might get some time periods, like if you study history and you see, well, there's a little bit of friendship here and this with Russia, but I'll tell you what, in the back of their minds, in Europe, they always want to go after Russia. The whole goal, not just from Napoleon or Hitler, and even before that time, you know, it's to get Russia. They got to get Russia. And it really makes you wonder, Russia really never bothers any of them. It's not like they need any more territory, and they have a lot of the resources. And it's like, well, what the heck is Russia doing to them? It's practically nothing at all. Russia wants to live in peace. They want to trade and get along with people. You know, you can even look at the time of Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin had to run out of the United States. Charlie Chaplin in those days was the most popular person on planet Earth. And I might have mentioned in another video that they were trying to assassinate Charlie Chaplin when he was in Japan, but by accident, they assassinated the Prime Minister of Japan instead of Charlie Chaplin. So that's how popular he was. And it's pretty interesting. I read Charlie Chaplin's autobiography some time ago, and if you watch, I think it was it City Lights or Modern Times? I can't remember. He's walking on the street, and you know, you see a truck go by. You know, they have an oversized load. It's hanging off the side, so you have to put a red flag. You know, so traffic behind you sees that you have something that's overhanging. You know, the flatbed of your truck or whatever. And this truck hit a bump. The flag fell off, so Charlie Chaplin goes out and picks up the flag and starts running after the truck and waving it. Hey, your flag fell off. And around the corner comes this big procession of communists or whatever, and Charlie Chaplin didn't know, and he's so up in the front waving this red flag, and you know, it was comedy. And the United States government said that proves that he's a communist. Charlie Chaplin was just trying to make comedy, and that was one of the biggest things that the US government started going after Charlie Chaplin with. And another time is, I believe it was a Russian ambassador. See, Charlie Chaplin was extremely popular at that time. And there was some little talk of some place, Russian ambassador had laryngitis or something, couldn't speak. So they asked Charlie Chaplin to give a talk for him, because he was friends with a lot of performers, dancers, and opera singers and stuff from Russia as well. And so Charlie Chaplin said, "Oh, okay, I'll do it." So he did it, and he started his speech, and he said, "Comrades," and then he was doing a little talk, and it was just a little tiny speech, and then that's it. And then so back then they said that even proves it more that he's a communist. So anyway, so they were going to raid Charlie Chaplin. They're going to take all his money and things, which they were doing. And a lot of time he got word about this beforehand, so he was making some trip or something. Oh, and another main reason why is because he did not get U.S. citizenship, even though he was living in the United States, and he said he loved the United States and all that. But I don't know. He didn't say any reason why he should get U.S. citizenship, and I think he considered himself a citizen of the world. You know, he was a very forward-thinking person. He even made that movie, The Great Dictator, and I guess it was banned in the United States for a long, long time. He made it in 1939. It was a talking movie, and I think if you wanted to see it, I can't remember, but I don't know if it was banned from either. I think it was banned from television. I think the first time it was shown in the 1970s. You know, and he was mocking Adolf Hitler, and that was before the U.S. was in the war. Anyway, so interesting, Charlie Chaplin. Okay, I'm sorry about that, you guys. You probably want to hear more news. There's not so much really fascinating news. It's the same old bombings and things like that. But I was talking about concessions. Well, what other concessions should Russia make? Yeah, Trump said, well, the biggest one is they won't take over the whole country. Peskov said they will freeze it where it's at. But I think what he means by that is that those areas and the borders that are marked as being Kherson, Zaporozhye, and Lugansk and Donetsk, those areas of those four places, the areas where the boundaries were from those regions, Ukraine would have to evacuate their soldiers from those places, and of course it would be made Russian, and Russian would sign a treaty and say they will not, try to annex any other part, even though places like, say, Odessa are Russian cities. Catherine the Great had established Odessa. To be honest with you, Kievan Rus, the administrative history of Russia started in Kiev. Didn't start in Moscow or St. Petersburg. It started in Kiev. So that's also a Russian city, just like Kharkiv is. And then Russia, I guess, would sign something and said they're not going to seek to get those, But the problem is they were not even going after the original Donetsk and Lugansk, except for the fact that Kiev thought it was their right to massacre those people if they did not stop speaking Russian and pledge fealty to the Nazi government in Kiev. The Nazi governments that took over from that coup that the United States was heavily involved in, Victoria Nuland and George Soros, as you all know about that. But anyway, it makes me wonder, what would happen if they repeated it, which they probably will, at either right away or at some other time. They'll probably repeat that and also start killing those people unless they, got down. And, the whole thing is like they want Russians to be slaves. And of course, very strange, but that's how it seems to be working. That's a whole nother topic I don't want to get into. Gosh, I'm already about 30 minutes, and I don't want... Anyway, my class starts later today. It's the last class, and I can afford to, let it be like yesterday was nearly 5 hours to upload a 40-minute video. Okay. Forget about the concessions. That's enough for a whole nother video anyway. But essentially, Russia is fighting for people, and the West, now that includes, of course, Ukraine, they're fighting for resources. But, I think in Ukraine they fight for the ideology. It's just like a lot of people. So it's actually the dual purpose. It's ideology and resources. And it's a whole big topic. Anyway, to try to analyze this and start looking at the threads. Very fascinating, though, by the way. Yes, but if you have a different way to look at things, like even Donald Trump, even if he supposedly understands the Russian side, Russia, you can see, and it's the West. They don't. They see. Well, let me start from a different perspective. Russia sees that the land belongs to the people, and the people belong to the land. They are inseparable. They are inseparable, but it's not that way with certain peoples like Nazis, like in Israel. You know, they want to cleanse, supposedly in their words, cleanse the land because God gave them the land. So they want to take over that and get rid of all of the people that have lived there for thousands of years. And very much like Ukraine, they want all of the people that, you know, identify with Russia to get out of there so that they can take it. And it's even a little bit like old Adolf Hitler. It's the what is it called? The Lebensraum. Things like this. Look at this. Any language. Looks like some kind of a language class up here. I'll bet they don't have Russian. Children, students, business people and all that. So, school. Probably mostly children. Look, there's even a cafe here. Kind of out in the middle of a residential area. I wonder what this building is over here. I thought I'd been here before. Apparently not. Anyway, yeah. But you look at like how this 2008 crash happened and all that, and you know, toxic assets, all those kind of things back in the past, and it's undeniable when you also have to consider that banks are private, you know, private entities. And Obama, you know, he was the bankers president, so all of his top donors were the banks. Just like Lindsey Graham, all of his top donors are the military-industrial complex. So that's why you see the theme on how these people work. And banks are always involved in wars. Goldman Sachs is involved with all wars, and but it's not difficult because it's absolutely true. You know, and what was it? Mike Rivero made this film, and you can find it on YouTube. All wars are bankers' wars. He talks very fast in that, but it's all very true stuff. And this goes way back with Rothschilds and everything. And so, but this is fascism. This is fascism. Banks are private entities. They're there to make money. And if you want to be honest with you, the Federal Reserve is a private entity. Those are private banks, and they have control of the U.S., you know, money source. So, and they're involved in wars. Do you think they care about people? They care about the money. And a lot of time you get money from resources. But anyway, the system is set up much different over here in Belarus and Russia. So that should tell you a lot, and then you can just start connecting the dots after you know that. You guys know that because you're tuned into this video and a lot of other people that are trying to tell the truth. Yeah. Okay, and apparently I don't see any real results from it. It's like there was no footage or nothing. But apparently overnight there were a lot of, this is how I'm ending the video, by the way. There were a lot of, I guess, strikes by Russia on Ukrainian targets, and of course, military targets. And you know how they're going to milk that probably in Ukraine, and they're going to maybe even show old footage of something. And maybe, you know, as a matter of fact, what they were doing is they were showing some footage from the Ukrainian bombings when they were bombing places, you know, in Donetsk, and saying that it was the Russians bombing the Ukrainians, and it was the other way around. But they might be doing this now, you know, on this one, because I haven't seen anything come out yet. But anyway, I guess Trump was pissed off about that, and maybe his administration. You know, it's very strange. They had a ceasefire. Russia obeyed it. Ukraine didn't obey it. But of course, there was probably some strikes by Russia, but they were told that if they are attacked, they are to attack back. And of course, you know, Ukraine attacked them. And a lot of this, you know, Putin admitted that the attacks by Ukraine were less during that time. They were diminished, but they still kept going. And a lot of the people are talking about the fact that Zelensky does not control all those people. And you see an earlier video when he just became president of Ukraine, and he was like going towards the front line, and he was talking to these people, you know, and saying, well, we have to stop bombing these people and all that. And these Nazis said, we're not going to stop bombing you, you know, and they said, well, we run you don't run us. And Zelensky's kind of like, oh, okay, you know. And it was, yeah, the Nazis run him. And it was at that time. And apparently it still is. It's a lot of things. You got to look at all of that stuff. You guys might even know about that with Kolomoisky and all that, who made Zelensky. And then Zelensky turned on him. And I don't know whatever happened, if the guy had his fortune taken away from him, or most of it, and going to trials or courts. I don't know, maybe he's in jail, Kolomoisky. And of course, it's strange, he's Jewish as well, but he supports the people that hate the Jews, which are Nazis. and they come right out and say they hate Jews. Very weird stuff. But in any case, where am I getting here? Yeah. Well, Trump was pissed off, which is very strange. Trump was pissed off, and but he's not pissed off, and nobody gets pissed off when Ukraine is attacking Russia. And of course, maybe they see, well, it's not fair because Russia is more powerful, so therefore we have to give Ukraine intelligence so that they can bomb and kill, our intelligence from the United States that started the war, by the way, a war of conquest, because it's unfair if Russia is so much more powerful. Get into all of this stuff, it's just hard to understand. It's just hard to understand. But anyway, they're on Ukraine's side, and there's no denying that. They're in on Ukraine's side indeed, with money and intelligence and all. They don't give that stuff to you, Russia. But yet, Trump, he doesn't have any favorites. And I don't know. What about a poisonous gas? They know a lot of stuff is going on, but they sit back and they watch all this stuff. In any case, Trump is a lot more fair than Biden was. And of course, Biden was a lot of time the facilitator of all this. Rosemont Seneca. And I'm getting close to the time, and I can maybe talk about some things on my channel, but I'm under threat, of course, and if I talk about things that YouTube does not like, I'm going to get deleted permanently. So, and I think I still have maybe a week or 2 weeks, or I think it's less than a month, where I, have to obey these restrictions and can't say things that Google does not want you to know. But Biden's group there, and they were heavily involved, and just say they were doing research laboratories over there. And Billy Boy, he's saying there's going to be another pandemic, and that has something to do with that as well. So anyway, I try not to even follow that stuff so much anymore, because YouTube really, really watches me for that sort of thing. I don't know, they might delete me for just saying this. I doubt it. I don't think I crossed the line. But anyway, lots of money, organs. Like what you play in church. The organs. And drugs. What you buy in a pharmacy. Anyway, you can start covering up and saying all the crap that Ukraine is involved with, and the hundreds of millions. Putin, I already mentioned that before. A lot of people, for some odd reason, they're not talking about that. Putin would not have said that unless he has some evidence, and it probably will come out, but I don't know, maybe it's going to be ignored by the press. We're talking hundreds of billions of dollars. He was talking about stolen from the Ukrainian people, but I'll tell you what, it was probably first stolen from the American taxpayers, and all of us taxpayers, as the dollar is the world's reserve currency. Oh gosh, it's a big messed up thing, and it makes you really wonder what the world would be like if they weren't stealing billions, hundreds of billions of dollars from all of the people on the planet. And anyway, so that's probably about it. But anyway, it was like I said, it was overnight strikes, and probably did a lot of damage. Trump was pissed off about that. So what is it? Is Russia supposed to stop and obey the ceasefire that no longer exists, but yet Ukraine can just keep right on doing things? And as Germany, like I said some days ago, a huge, massive amount of artillery shells, weapons, and 66 armored vehicles came from Germany. But we don't have any weapons anymore. We're all out, as they always keep saying in the West. The United States says, Germany says, we don't have any more weapons. They got loads of weapons, loads and loads of them, lots of weapons. And I think Zelensky did an interview with Ben Shapiro, which I don't watch. I didn't even watch the video. I don't like Ben Shapiro one bit. He's nothing but a big charlatan con artist and things like that. So, and he pushes his side and ignores the other, heavily biased in what he wants to support. Sometimes you can support him and sometimes you don't. But I don't watch him because I tell you what, he just picks and chooses and he cherry picks. He's just a dishonest guy. Let me just put it that way. So anyway, but Zelensky says he has a 100,000 man army or whatever. I don't know if he said 1 million, because one time they said they had 1 million man army. in Ukraine. Anyway, they do have a lot of soldiers. It's a big military. Russia does not. I don't know. I think maybe Russia outnumbers them by now, but Russia, of course, has better equipment. They have more equipment, and Ukraine, has to keep begging for more and more money. And of course, if they used all the money that they begged and they got from the West, you can imagine they would be doing heavy destruction to Russia. But the corruption takes most of that money. And did I say that? Yes, I said most. Most of that money doesn't even go to that effort that it's supposed to go to. It goes into various places. And the West, I'll tell you what, a lot of the corrupt people over there, they take a lot of that money too. And as I said, I've dealt with people in governments and all, and I've seen a lot of this stuff firsthand. And it's not like they steal the cash alone, but the cash goes into jobs. Like you get a job paid huge amounts of money. And of course, it's not even on the salary. So what they do is, so your salary looks like it's low. Zelensky's salary is very low, but how could, he's got private businesses, sure, but there's a lot of other people that work in Ukraine, and they're listed as having these very low salaries. But yet these people maybe have even billions of dollars, and they got it while they are in public office with this low salary. It said, well, how did that happen? A lot of it is, say, for example, in this one country that I was in, government people, they get per diem when they go traveling. They get a huge sum of money. They get far more money when they make a trip than their entire month's salary. The trip might take 4 days, but they get far more money for that than they do on their regular salary. So then when they can go in front of the press and they can say, well, my salary is only this, and then they can show the evidence, but boy, I tell you what. And I would have to sit here and think about some of the other things I've seen from that. But they become multimillionaires. It's the same thing in the United States. Of course, insider trading, they know where the laws are going to go and what's going on and who's going to get cut and all that, so they can invest accordingly. So that's why they all become multimillionaires, the people in American Congress and Senate and all that. And Obama, he was only a senator for like 2 years, and they made him a president. Of course, he was fast-tracked, very obvious, and he was fabulous. I mean, the salary for a president is $400,000 US. From that $400,000 US, they have to pay the White House staff. If any place in the White House needs any furniture or something, it has to come out of that money. Gardeners, everything, the entire expenses for the White House has to come out of that $400,000, and it's of course illegal for Obama to send his daughter on vacation to Mexico using Air Force One, which he did. That's illegal. That's misappropriation of government funds right there. You can't do that. Obama got away with anything he wanted to do, and Obama, by the time he left office, I just recently said, at that time, it was known I think he left, he had $28 million. He came in with $2 million. So how did that happen, And of course, he wrote his book, The Dreams of My Father, which is, a lot of that is BS, I guess, in there anyway. And he even mentioned a firm in there, apparently. Somebody pointed it out. And that firm is a big CIA front. He said he worked for that firm. And of course, most everybody has shown that Obama's parents were CIA. They were both CIA. And there's things what his mother was doing while she was in there, and there's a lot of question on who his real father is and all that, and I don't know about it. Doesn't, and Kenya says that he was born in Kenya. Hawaii says he was born in Hawaii. I don't know. It's too late anyway. It doesn't matter. But a lot of corruption, a lot of lies, and if you look at Ukraine is lies on steroids. So that's about all I have to say about that. And the video is going to be maybe too long, so I'll cut this off right now. And things are going to change probably with my channel very soon here. I'll make things a little bit differently, maybe different types of content or something when I have the time. I don't know. Eventually I have to work, like I said. But in the meantime, that's how it's going to be. And I thank you guys for joining me, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks again. Bye-bye.